some general comments that I'd like to make from my experience in working across at least 3 or 4 continents on these issues. Firstly, there's very little work that's done by so-called mainstream human rights organizations on disability rights issues. And this is a very big problem. Even in the court, Norwegian organizations advocating for access to healthcare should be advocating against forced and compelled treatment. Norwegian organizations who focus on criminal law and on detention and imprisonment and all of these things should be doing this type of work here. Across the world, this is not done because disability is seen as an issue which is a side issue, and people are left to advocate for themselves, essentially. One of the reasons why I've so strongly advocated within the ICJ for us to do this type of work is because historically organizations of persons with disabilities have felt like they have not been of any interest to so-called mainstream human rights organizations, particularly the big ones, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, etc. And even then, when there is a focus, it's normally on what are considered to be the most heinous and grossest of human rights violations, which then sort of makes the reporting look like if you're doing a report on people being shackled to poles in Ghana, like that this is a specific Ghana-related thing. It's not a common problem all around the world. So I think that that's important to look at. And even then, within disability rights, again, will be no secret here that the focus on psychosocial disability is not very pronounced. And people with psychosocial disabilities are very commonly not very well represented on organizations of persons with disabilities in countries. The evidence of this is substantial everywhere. In Africa, where we work, you have to kind of try and find people to be able to do this work with instead of finding federations of persons with disabilities who then generally represent the issues and convey them. And yeah, and sometimes even within the ICJ, when the ICJ has been developing standards of a broader nature, and I can give one example. The ICJ published in March 2023 a set of standards on the impact of the criminal law on human rights. And in consultation with colleagues, including Tina, the best that we could do to try and make sure that no harm was done or additional harm was done by these progressive standards was to get our colleagues to remove references to disability and legal capacity from the principles entirely, right? Now, this should show you where we're at, right? Generally, expertise on human rights and you would imagine, sitting where we are and talking about what we're talking about, that like if we're going to develop principles on the application of the criminal law or any coercive forms of detention and human rights, that you would have experts on disability rights in the room, and so you would be able to develop things that were positive. But we have not managed to do that. And so in general, this has been a tactic that we've had to employ several times internally.